Ever since movies and theaters have existed, we've gone to see spectacles. Dazzling images on a huge silver screen. Sound that you can feel. Somehow, heartbreak feels good in a place like... Wait a minute, I'm just reading the Nicole Kidman AMC ad script. Oh, here's my script. Okay, every once in a while in entertainment, there are cinematic events. Usually people think of stuff like culminations, examples like Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Avengers Endgame. Most recently, we had Spider-Man No Way Home. But rarely do we get a cinematic experience like this one. A double feature, 5-hour-long day at the movies. And the best part, both Barbie and Oppenheimer give you a variety of filmmaking, emotional beats, and genre. So you're never bored, and it just feels like you're getting the best parts of cinema all in one day. The stories feel perfect and powerful because here... they are. I slipped back into Nicole Kidman again, damn it. Anyways, obviously, I had to go experience this event and also had to prepare accordingly. Oh yeah, spoiler alert, but I'm not actually Grimace. He's more of an idol or a avatar to me. And side note, everyone apologized to Grimace, okay? I saw those Grimace Shake memes. He didn't kill anybody. He didn't murder anybody. He just wanted to have a good birthday, and you guys ruined it for him. You ruined it. And I mean, there was literally already a criminal in the McDonald's family. The Hamburglar was right there. Grimace was framed. Anyways, we started in the morning with Oppenheimer, had a 20-minute break, then went to see Barbie. And I will stick by this viewing order as I feel like the way in which Oppenheimer ends will have you thinking about it for a while. And it leaves you feeling, existential dread. So it makes Barbie the perfect palate cleanser to make you feel a little bit more humor and lightheartedness. I'll talk more in depth about how they work together near the end of this video, but let's start with the individual reviews, starting with...
Harry! There's a bomb strapped to my chest! It's gonna explode in 3 seconds unless you take a bath! Please?
Oppenheimer. This is by far one of Christopher Nolan's best, up there with Memento and Interstellar for me. The story can feel a little overwhelming at first as it jumps through a lot of dialogue and time periods pretty quickly, showing scenes from before the war, where we see Oppenheimer going through most of his studies, during the war, where we see the bulk of the Manhattan Project, and after the war, where we see the consequences Oppenheimer and the creation of the nuke faced, and what Louis Strauss was up to. Now, to me, Nolan handled the balance well for these 3 periods. It felt much more seamless and was easier to follow than Dunkirk, in my opinion. Seeing Oppenheimer's pre-war days was a good way of showing the viewer just how brilliant he was, as well as his scientific and social potential, both good and bad. We then get to see how elaborate and militaristic the Trinity Project really was. The Cold War almost seems to be happening during World War II, due to how often political ideals played a role. Nolan also uses a simple and intuitive way of showing how much they have progressed in the project and how much time has passed without needing exposition constantly. We see the political landscape of those who worked on the project both before and after the bombs were dropped, and it's almost overwhelming when you realize that so much of this actually happened. And this point is brought up several times in the movie, really showcasing how dangerous the power the US had with the bomb, which is the main theme that's being dealt with post the war. Also showing how Oppenheimer was treated afterwards, what the government does with him, what his past does with him when it catches up. We see a full scope of his life, what he did right, what he did wrong. Oppenheimer was both the monster that created the weapon that could destroy us all, and perhaps someone who prevented something much worse from happening. It's such an interesting gray area to see. And Cillian Murphy does an immaculate job as Robert Oppenheimer, and I think it's easy to say he will be a front runner for award season because of how much I was really drawn into his performance. Robert Downey Jr. also played an incredible Louis Strauss, who's really focused on in the last act, and it is an interesting and different role for Downey that I think he sold really well. There's also, of course, Matt Damon, Emily Blunt, Florence Pugh, Jason Clarke, Josh Hartnett, and we get to see our boys Jack Quaid, Michael Angarano, Josh Peck, and Devin Bostick. Devin Bostick! Christopher Nolan's really just bringing the childhood back. The cast is just stacked. Even insanely acclaimed actors like Kenneth Branagh, Rami Malek, and Gary Oldman barely even have much screen time but deliver insane performances. Also shout out to Tom Conti who played Albert Einstein.
It's Albert Einstein. Oh my God, it's Albert Einstein. Oh my God.
Thought those scenes really delivered. Lastly, I want to give props to Alden Ehrenreich, who sort of played the character who was the audience's point of view and did a great job opposite of Robert Downey Jr. But seriously, this is one of the most solid ensemble performances of all time. The sound and visual experience of this movie is unlike anything I've ever seen before. At this point, I feel like Christopher Nolan has really mastered his use of sound in his movies. I was so drawn into every scene in this movie due to Ludwig Göransson's amazing score and the incredible sound design that's present throughout the whole movie. I think it perfectly captures the brilliant and anxious mind of Oppenheimer, where he is constantly thinking of worst-case scenarios and how his work will affect the future. Also, the use of when not to use sound was incredible. There is a scene towards the end of the movie that is so haunting. And how can I not mention, of course, the Trinity tests, a masterclass again of sound and visual design. Just the pure scale of the explosion and tension it created was immense. And they perfectly captured the way the sound traveled for the explosion. Just an incredible Christopher Nolan flick. Now let me talk a little bit about spoilers, even though, this is it's kind of history. So skip to this point if you don't want to hear it. Some standout moments for me are when we get the news that the Japanese have surrendered and they have that little rally for Oppenheimer, and he just starts seeing visions of what a nuke would do in that building, and it's insanely intense. The sound, the silence, the screams, the flash burning the audience, and then suddenly the audience is gone. So harrowing. I also loved when Kitty Oppenheimer was being questioned and she just destroys Jason Clarke's character. Emily Blunt killed that scene. Finally, the whole ending sequence when we find out that Strauss loses the vote and JFK's name was dropped, like when they name dropped Robin's name in Dark Knight Rises, that was just so unintentionally hilarious. But when Alden's character tells Strauss that Albert and Oppenheimer may have been talking about something more important than him, oh my gosh. That was a deep burn. Then, of course, Oppenheimer's last line of the movie. And after hearing that, it really made me think that maybe Oppenheimer's right. The world is probably doomed due to the creations that were made during that time, and it's already started a reaction that will cause the end of the world. So, of course, now, feeling dread, I was like, okay, so we're all doomed. Well, anyways, now it's time to go to Barbie World, losers. Barbie was such a pleasant and smart movie from Greta Gerwig, and man, I really need to see her other movies now because this one rocked. And before going into this, my only real exposure to Barbie was like Barbie and Ken from Toy Story 3. So I really didn't know what to expect from this movie. Like the ad said, whatever you think this movie is going to be, it's probably not that. See, I thought it would be all about whoa, Barbie somehow came to the real world and hijinks ensue. And while that does happen for a little bit, it's mostly set in Barbie land and about Barbie's effect on women and society, and about how being a woman in the real world isn't as easy in a make-believe world where everything is perfect all the time. And I mean, while I'd love to speak on the feminism aspect of the movie, well... So I'll just say that it talks about some of the injustices women still somehow get put through today, and how men and women still aren't even close to being treated equally today, despite society being able to hide it better. But beyond the feminist aspect, it also just mainly talks about not needing others to define you. I think there's some great emotional scenes in this that really make you feel warm, and Margot Robbie really killed it when it counted. Two scenes in particular, one near the beginning and one towards the end. And again, Margot Robbie was a great lead, although for some points they tried to make probably wasn't the perfect cast. If you know, you know. The supporting cast was also great. I love the mother and daughter relationship. That was also a really present theme in this movie. Although I guess I feel like the daughter really wasn't that present in the second half of the movie. The mom, though, played by America Ferrara, had a great monologue. A great monologue at the climax of the movie. Monologue. All the characters in Barbie Land looked fantastic and each stood out on their own, like Simu Ken, Kate McKinnon Barbie, and of course, Alan, who had a great scene. Oh yeah, there was also Kingsley Benadir Ken, and I'm glad he's in a much better project than the one he's also in now. But, you know, that one's a secret. I won't tell you what the other one is. Rhea Perlman's character may have been my favorite, though. She really sold me on who she played and practically made me tear up near the end. But how could I not mention the man himself, the Ken of Kens. Giving a Ken out of Ken performance. Ken, played by Ryan Gosling. I think this is up there with his Nice Guys performance. I just laughed practically every time he was on screen. His physical comedy, his line delivery, the writing for his character was just peak himbo, and I loved every second of it. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he was nominated just for how much he dominated this movie. The song he performs is on repeat for me now too. And God, I hope it gets nominated for Best Original Song so they have to play it at the Oscars. The humor in this movie is so smart and unexpected in the best way. Just because I was expecting a little safe and maybe somewhat corporate, but they said, fuck that. Let's put it in the Barbie doesn't have genitals joke. The tone of this movie was just such a joy and I never wanted it to end. The pace made it feel so fast, but that was, of course, probably because we had watched a 3-hour movie, Oppenheimer, right before. I also have to commend how well they used music in this movie, both licensed and original. It never drew me out of the movie. Let me talk about some of my favorite moments though. So spoilers ahead, skip to here to see my rankings of the movies and final thoughts. God, the whole Kendom sequence was hilarious. Just how the Kens were obsessed with horses, brewskis, and some possibly over-acclaimed movies. Like how they joked about Zack Snyder's Justice League or, The Godfather, just dunking on film bros. Like, come on, guys. Sure, I can recognize The Godfather. It's a well-made movie, but, well...
It insists upon itself, Lois.
What?
It insists upon itself.
What does that even mean?
Because it has a valid point to make. It's insistent.
I also loved when Gosling's Ken said he had lost interest in patriarchy once he realized horses really weren't that involved in it. Oh my god, and the Mattel self-aware jokes were hilarious. I loved all the fake toys that they made, even the Mojo Dojo Casa House. Man, it is fun to say that. Mojo Dojo Casa House. Mojo Dojo Casa House. Mojo Dojo Casa House. The Depression Barbie ad was also great, although I wish they had used the Keira Knightley Pride and Prejudice for it. Also, of course, I knew the joke was coming, but that final joke at the end was hilarious. So yeah, to describe Barbie in one word, I think I would say sublime. This cinematic experience brought so many people together at the movies, caused so many discussions afterwards, and even caused others to think about themselves, society, even the world itself. And while one ends making you feel that the world may be doomed, the other one makes us feel appreciative of living every day and just being ourselves. Thinking on a smaller scale really helps me, and you can't scale difference from the invention of the nuke and the invention of Barbie. But I'm just so glad that I watched these movies back to back and got to witness firsthand Barbenheimer. Now in my overall movie TV rankings, I would put Oppenheimer up here in S tier and Barbie at the tippy top of A tier. Alright, now Algae Rhythm says to like, comment, and subscribe, and now Pete, send these Kens down to Kendom.